Alright, hi. I have not posted in a month because I have moved and also because I've just been getting work done because I didn't do any summer homework until last week. So, for this video, instead of talking about one book for 10 to 20 minutes, I'm instead going to do one of those August book review rundown lists. I'm not really sure what you call those, but this is what I read in the month of August. First thing I read was Beowulf, translated by Seamus Heaney, and I thought it was honestly not that great. I first really encountered Beowulf this past year in English class, and I was a lot more excited then because it was just an old English text, and I was excited to see Anglo-Saxons fighting monsters. But when I read it for English class, it was a lot more condensed. It was the Burton Raffles translation, and it didn't have the dragon scenes or all the story scenes where it's like telling old stories about Swedes and Danes and years gone by. But then I reread it this August with a friend online, and now that I've reread it, I have a much lower opinion of the story, because Beowulf is not very exciting, which would seem quite strange because it's a book, or rather it's an epic poem about a man who can match 30 men in strength with one arm and swim for a week without stopping and dive for a whole day and kill monsters and dragons like they're nothing. But that's kind of the problem for me, personally, because I did not enjoy how little was actually going on with the plot. Beowulf largely succeeds through the entirety of the work. He never really loses, and there's not much to his character to really speak of besides being strong, being honorable, and being a man of God and being a good king. He's not really an interesting character, and I think overall that makes the plot suffer, because if you take a look at other epics, namely the Iliad and the Odyssey, they have charming, magnetic characters like Achilles and Odysseus and Hector, but here all you have is basically a meathead. It's like Goku, but set in Anglo-Saxon times and Viking times, and I think that's really just the biggest flaw with the story, is that there's nothing really going on besides Beowulf going around and killing monsters. And while I do think that Heaney does a good job translating, I think overall it's just not that fun of a read, because there's just not much going on for me. Yeah. Second thing I read was King Lear by Shakespeare, and I thought this was a great play. I thought it's really up there with all the Shakespeare classics like Hamlet and Julius Caesar, both of which are my favorite Shakespeare plays. And I think this play overall does a great job showing how one man can fall from grace totally. And I think the characters are very well done. I absolutely hated watching Goneril and Regan screw over their father King Lear, while Cordelia is really the best daughter and the most dutiful and loving to her father. And I thought the plot as a whole, watching Goneril and Regan and Edmund trying and vying for the throne, all while France is invading, and then the entire family just ends up broken and shattered by the end, all because of one man's arrogance and refusal to accept that time has passed him by and that he is way, way past his prime. But he refuses to see that, and he is so wrapped up in being seen as king that he doesn't actually do a good job as king, and he fails his entire country and his daughters, most of all, especially Cordelia, because Goneril and Regan are just awful, awful people, and I am so glad that they ended up dead by the end of the play. Spoilers, by the way, sorry. And then, after that, I read some things on my new Kobo, because I have an e-reader now. So the first thing I read was something that I've actually been reading since around April. It was on and off again. It was a collection of Leo Tolstoy's shorter fiction collected into a little volume by Everyman's Library. And I thought it was a really, really good collection because I read Anna Karenina during the pandemic and I loved it. I thought it was beautifully written with amazing, fascinating, realistic characters, and I thought that it was just the best book that I've ever read up to that point. And I thought the plot was very well done and all the characters were so magnetic and so captivating. And watching Anna fall into a violent storm of jealousy and paranoia and eventually depression, all contrasted with Levin's rise from socially awkward, introverted landowner to socially awkward landowner with a wife and kid that he loves. And I thought it was just amazing. I would read it again. I'm probably going to read it in December at some point, or at least some point this year or next year. But anyway, I read the collected shorter fiction of Leo Tolstoy, Volume 1, and I thought it was a great collection. I thought it was the best way to probably introduce someone to Leo Tolstoy without having to read Anna Karenina, War and Peace, which are both famously massive works of fiction. And I thought there were some great works in there, like, for example, Sevastopol Sketches. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it was based off Leo Tolstoy's time fighting in the Caucasus, and I thought it was gripping, and I thought it was harrowing to read, watching soldiers not knowing if they were going to live or die and trying to almost make the best of a horrible, horrible situation. And there's 3 of those, and each of them I think was better than the last, and I really enjoyed reading Sevastopol Sketches. And another great work from this collection is Family Happiness. It's sort of like a smaller version of Anna Karenina, where a woman falls in love with a man and her entire life changes, but there's no trains involved this time. And overall, I think the collection really captures Tolstoy's beauty and charm with his writing that is well expressed and easily defined in a giant work like Anna Karenina. But in this shorter collection, it still shines through, and it shows someone who might not be as experienced or as well read with Tolstoy to really enjoy what his style of writing is like. For example, there is a story titled Strider, and it was all from the perspective of a horse who was past his prime, who has gotten old and is no longer recognized, but still has a story to tell. And it's a striking story because, first of all, you don't expect it to be from the perspective of a horse, and secondly, it's just great writing. And it's a little bit, I wouldn't say confusing, but gradually you settle into the idea that this is a horse with thoughts and feelings, and that's something that I don't think a lot of writers go for, trying to write from the perspective of a horse, especially as well as I think Tolstoy did. And I think overall you can get a sense of what Tolstoy writes about. He writes a lot about family and loving God and finding happiness in life. And you can really see that here in stories like Lucerne and Family Happiness and What a Man Lives By, which is a short story about the Archangel Michael falling to earth and learning what man lives by, and what man is all about, and what it means to be human by being forced to live as a human himself. But anyway, yeah, I read that. It was a great short story. It was a great short story collection, and I think I will probably be reading Volume 2 at some point in the coming year, or 2023. We'll see. And finally, the last thing I read, which was also on my Kobo, was Selected Political Speeches by Marcus Tullius Cicero, the famous Roman statesman who, I'm not really sure what to say about him. Well, first of all, he was consul during the Catilinarian conspiracy, and he is one of the most famous, if not the most famous, Roman orator to have ever lived. And he is one of those remarkable characters that though he wasn't a general, he was still very influential in Roman politics and Roman history and generally world history as a whole, because everything adds up in history. But anyway, this was a collection of some of his speeches, such as in favor of Gnaeus Pompeius, sending him to the Mithridatic War, or in defense of Titus Annius Milo, who was accused and convicted of killing Clodius, the easiest thing to call him is a rabble-rouser, but I don't think that really captures just how much of a chaotic force Clodius was. But it's a collection of some of his more famous speeches, such as in favor of Gnaeus Pompeius and his Catilinarian orations, which were against Lucius Sergius Catilina, the man who tried to bring down the Republic and failed. And Cicero wrote 4 speeches, all of them against him, and all of them trying to smear his name and his conspirators, and also to show that Cicero is a great statesman and a great consul and a hero of the Republic. And generally, you get the sense that Cicero is a good speaker. He's eloquent, he speaks to the point, and he knows how to elaborate and really show you what his point is. And he really, I think, does a good job persuading the court and also the reader of his case. Even though sometimes it's probably not going to match up with the current time period. Like, for example, one of his speeches, I believe it was in favor of Marcus Caelius Rufus, Marcus Caelius Rufus is trying to get a pardon for a friend. But I don't remember exactly what it's called, but basically it's a speech in favor of a young man who's being convicted of trying to poison and trying to kill people. And instead, Cicero is trying to clear his name by talking about how young the man is and how it's not really his fault because he's so young and impressionable, and he has that youthful vigor about him that kind of makes it hard to blame him for what he's doing. It's embarrassing that I don't remember the name right now because I just read it, but Cicero does a really good job trying to persuade the reader of what he's talking about, and he also sometimes does it more indirectly. For example, in this collection, there is the first Philippic against Mark Antony. And instead of really speaking totally against Mark Antony as a person, he instead goes for the way of talking about how, now that Caesar is dead, Mark Antony is trying to bypass the laws. He's mucking up everything, and he's just trying to ruin the Republic, and he's rude and crass, and he'll probably destroy us all. Which was not entirely wrong, but this was also politics. So Cicero's a little bit out for blood, but the second Philippic, from what I've heard, and will probably find out when I read, is much more cutting and scathing than the first Philippic. But in general, you get the sense that Cicero's a good speaker, and you can really see that through his speeches, because he really does a good job, I think, persuading the reader through his eloquence and his way with words, but he also has a slight tendency to just go on too long, and also make himself look good and really almost pander to people. Like, for example, in favor of Gnaeus Pompeius, he's really talking a lot to how Pompey is a great man, and his father was a great man. He has a great service that he must do for the Republic that no one else can do except Pompey. And in the Catilinarian orations, he's really bolstering himself as a person and a consul, and trying to show that he is a great man, and that he is a hero to remember. And that he wants not only the Senate, not only the People's Assembly, but the reader as well to know that he will be remembered, and he should be remembered, because he put down a conspiracy that was going to destroy the Republic. Yeah. But anyway, that's all I've read in the month of August. Not very much, since one was just a carryover from multiple months, and I only read three other things this month, which was kind of slow, but maybe it'll pick up next month or October. But anyway, thank you for sitting through 15 minutes of me talking incoherently about books. And I will see you in the next one. Hopefully, it's not a month from now or 2 months from now, but I'll see you then.